Hello again. We're maybe a little bit on double time today. I guess there's a time for wine and there's a time for a drink of scotch. I just want to continue with the series that we started to talk about whiskey, and scotch is a generic term, has become in a way, but I guess we still have to be careful because this is an Italian malt whiskey, so technically it's not a scotch, but it is. It has all the characteristics, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. And so here we are again, trying to, as we start with this series, trying to look at different notions, different angles on the making of scotch, which is really, at the end of the day, it's distilled malt barley, and then you get the spirit with it, and then all sorts of variety on how strong you want it, what kind of barrels you age it, and as we discussed a little bit, for how long, whether you add coloring or not, whether you want gas strength or not at the end, whether you filter it or not, and all these kind of characteristics that over time we're going to try to discover together. What we have today is something I tasted at a tasting and I really liked it, so I bought a bottle. And that's this Italian Puni, Puni. It's kind of a Puni, you see it here. They have three core bottlings, Gold, Sole, and something else, I forget the name. This is the Sole, it's Italian malt. This is an interesting story because it's a distillery that was started in the Alps, basically in Alto Adige, in the Trentino Alto Adige area, so all the way in the north of Italy, south of the Alps, on the river Puni. So that's where they got the name, and we'll see that the rivers do have a very important role in the formation of these distilleries. When we get to Speyside in Scotland and talk about some of the scotches there, so because water is very important, for treating the barley in the beginning and the malt, and so like we have with beer, of course. Anyway, so so they started in 2010. In the beginning, was a bit of a mix of malt, wheat, and rye, but now it's really 100% malt. They also have some special bottlings, and all it has to do with the aging, what you age it with, and again, it's a young institution. It doesn't have, it's not like a Macallan where you have barrels going back 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So this is something that is aged for a total of 4 years. 2 years in ex-bourbon, as we know, as we haven't discussed, but in the US, when you use barrels for bourbon, you can only use them once. So all these bourbon barrels end up across the ocean in Scotland, in France, in some of the other places where they're making cognac, brandy, scotch, whiskey, what have you, to be reused for aging. So you will see that notion, whether it's bourbon casks, first fill, second fill, what have you. In bourbon, it's probably never going to be first fill. So 2 years in bourbon casks, and then 2 more years in sherry casks. These come Pedro Jimenez sherry. So this is the probably best known sherry casks in Spain or anywhere. Extremely desirable. And we're not going to get into the discussion on casks now. We could do that at some other time. And although I would never have that sort of technical expertise to. But what I know is, to me, those sherry casks is what gives the sweetness and the structure to the whiskey. I find that bourbon alone, the bourbon cask alone, sometimes gives it a little bit of too much sweetness in a way, and a little bit of coarseness. I'm not quite sure how to explain it, and I don't really have a lot of sort of bourbon cask whiskey, so we can discuss that. Anyway, so this is, I think it's a great combo, the bourbon and the finishing. I've seen it in the scotch, a lot of scotches, and it's worked really well for me. And then when I tasted it, before getting into how it was made, whatever, I really liked it. And then I guess after the fact, you find out that it has some of these characteristics that make you maybe understand why you liked it to begin with. This is 46% alcohol. It's unfiltered. It's natural color. You see the color in the bottle and in the glass. and we're gonna see what it gives. It's 100% made in Italy. The distillery is there. The stills are there, and all that kind of stuff. And the malt comes from Italy as well. Sorry, on the nose, you get that caramel, that sort of raisin, maybe a little bit, but also a little bit of wheat from fermentation. Somebody said it's kind of granola because I guess you get the wheat and the sweetness and the dried fruit, and it sort of comes together. The wheat from the fermentation, like the wheat and the yeast, and it gives you this sort of feel. And it's a combination of sweet and slightly, not necessarily bitter, but bready, let's say. Seems to be pretty specific to this. I don't necessarily get, you can get different things from different scotches. On the palate, it's again, that's really, you got sort of a little bit of orange, but orange because it's kept that tartness a little bit. You got the sweetness, caramel, vanilla, dried raisins. You get that sort of breadiness from the yeast, and it's kind of like I find it's a bit of a mix between the two scotches we discussed before, the Kilchoman and the Nectar for Daily Dram. One was really on the sweeter side. The other one was, because it came in wine barrels, the other one was really just much more straightforward, much more, really, I'm like a hardcore peaty scotch kind of thing. This is not peaty at all, by the way. So this is the first one we discussed that doesn't have any smokiness about it. It's sort of, if you want to call it like your sweet whiskey in a way, because they all tend to have a little bit more sweetness to them. And the notes are the dried fruit, the orange, vanilla, a little bit of ginger also. So there's that spiciness that's very subtle, but it kind of, blends in with the sweetness. Again, just great. It's a great whiskey. It's not scotch. It's a really good bottle if you find it, and if you want to sort of expand into understanding what can be made where, this is a great example of that. Cheers, and see you again soon.